which is super exciting to kind of pull us all together from all over the valley to learn more about supplements and what's in them. I'm Veronica Campbell. I started the think tank. I had to go back and look. It was in 2012. So we're going on 14 years of pulling this community together. So the goal was to pull like-minded practitioners together for the greater good, right? Learning about each other, creating a community of collaborative care and holistic medicine, where we're sort of showing up for our patients at a higher level, and where our referrals are genuine because we can actually say, we met that person, we know that person, we've listened to their presentations, we know more about them. So really this is about creating authentic community here in Phoenix, which has been growing and growing and growing. We started with 12 people at the first meeting. We have 500 Facebook members. I think it's like 480 members that are in the emails. Hopefully, eventually, we'll kind of pull together. I tried to start a directory. It kind of fizzled, but I'm re-looking at some of that so that we know how to get better a hold of each other. The Facebook's getting a little old, but it's still a place where you can ask questions of like, who's a good pediatric oncologist? Who's a good massage therapist in the East Valley? Who specializes in SIBO in the West Valley, right? Like some of these questions, this is a practitioner-only group, so practitioner to practitioner, and we're here locally. So we're really creating community with this. But I'm really, really excited for this topic tonight. Sanjeev and I, also known as Jeevers, right?
Kathleen, I see her.
I know, met a while ago. He'll talk about what he does, but he has a product called Nerve. That's a cream that I use in the clinic to help work with, because I'm a specialist in nerves, to help work with nerves. And so if you want more information about the actual products that he's selling here locally at different clinics, we'll make sure that information is posted later. But I'm going to let him take the floor because there's so much to learn and he's so dynamic and exciting. So hope you're ready. Like, this is going to be a fun roller coaster ride. So I'll let you take the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Veronica. I appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for joining. This is going to be super fun. Honored to be here. Honored to be part of the think tank. Like Veronica said, I met Veronica actually through one of the other practitioners that she knows. And so just real quick, guys, I won't do a whole thing because I think that the content is probably more valuable than knowing more about me. And you can always know more about me later. But my name's Sanjeev. Everybody calls me Jeevers because that's way more fun. And I am a nutritional biochemist, but I specialize in the formulation of dietary supplements. And so, yeah, guys, so I've been kind of, formulating nutritional supplements for the past 21 years. And I have a formulation firm and we formulate for kind of all sorts of companies, everything from kind of practitioner lines like Zymogen all the way to kind of, the commercial ones out there like BSN and EAS and all that sort of stuff. And then nowadays it's been a lot of groups that are like individuals, and so anyways, we do kind of all sorts of formulation work. My specialty is in diabetes, obesity, autoimmune, post-chemotherapy, neurological issues, but I do a lot of performance supplements as well too. So yeah, guys, that's what I've been doing. And then for the last 15 years, I've opened up my own formulation firm, and then Veronica met me because I have my own brand that kind of started as a passion project and it's kind of grown and stuff. So anyways, I just want to make sure I'm always admitting everyone. Okay, cool. So here's the deal, guys. So this kind of started a little bit because I have a little talk that I do give that's almost like the nuances of supplementation. So that was because a lot of people were asking me just about the different ways to take supplements and how kind of ingredients can work together better. It's kind of like if you're going to take collagen, then you want to make sure that you have enough vitamin C and copper and zinc because kind of those are the cofactors that allow for the reassembly of collagen. Or if you're going to take vitamin D, then you want to make sure that you're getting calcium, vitamin K2. That's how that whole conversation, if you will, is valuable to the end consumer. But then when I was talking to Veronica, she was like, hey, listen, a lot of people just don't understand about just the industry in general. And kind of, you guys being as practitioners, maybe there's more of a, let's go behind the curtain of manufacturing and development and kind of find out a little bit more about, the industry in general. So that's what this is for. What I'm going to do is I'm going to touch on a bunch of topics. Hopefully, some of them you're interested in and it'll be exciting. But then what I'll also do is I'll save plenty of time for questions as well, too, because sometimes those questions are oftentimes like the best like discussions or whatever. But so here's the thing, guys. You've probably been, around some of you for some of the scandals of supplementation, right? Like in 2015, where, they kind of pulled the St. John's wort and ginkgo biloba off the shelves of like major stores like Walmart and Vitamin Shop and Vitamin Cottage and stuff. And they found that, whoa, wait a second, 80% of these supplements didn't have what was listed on the label. And they had other things in there that were like, various herbs or spices or just plant material and things like that. Or just even recently, like with, I guess the biggest thing right now is with creatine and creatine gummies, how, they kind of pull those now no longer it's off the shelf, it's more off of Amazon. And they're pulling things off of Amazon and they're seeing, whoa, wait a second, again, the things aren't necessarily dangerous. There's kind of like maybe one or two things that I've heard that individuals were putting dangerous ingredients in their product. But most of the time it's just labeling issues, meaning that what the product is said to have doesn't actually have it in there. And that's a big, huge issue, obviously, for the end consumer and what they're spending and all that sort of stuff. But then you've got some of that. And then also recently with some of the proteins, right? Proteins and heavy metals and things like that. And you're kind of scratching your head and you're like, how did this happen? Like, how is it that a product can get out on the shelf and it not have any of the ingredients that are on the label? Or how does a product get on the shelf and it have this, higher level of heavy metals and things like that? So you're like, is this stuff really regulated? Like, is this industry really regulated? And here's the thing, we are regulated. We're a regulated kind of industry. The problem is that we're regulated, but we're not very well enforced. And the reason why we're not well enforced is because, a long time ago, if you will, in the 80s or whatever, dietary supplements became categorized as a food rather than a drug. So on one hand, that's really good, right? Because it's a food. It doesn't have to go through some of the things that drug manufacturers have to do, some of the testing and such that would increase costs and all that sort of thing. But what that also did was made it so that the the essence was sell first, regulate later. Okay, right? And what that means is that we're regulated backwards. So pharmaceuticals and drugs, you build a product, you develop a product, you design it, you do all that sort of stuff, and then you do a massive amount of safety studies. You then do a massive amount of efficacy studies, and then the product gets on the market, right? Well, dietary supplements are backwards. So what we do is we develop the product, we design the product, we formulate the product, I'm just admitting a few, but we then have the ability to manufacture the product, we then have the ability to package the product, and then we can actually start selling the product. And we can actually get it out there. And the only time in which we are, regulated from a safety standpoint is when there's enough complaints to the FDA saying, hey, this product is hurting me. And this product is doing this or that. So we then get a letter from the FDA, and the FDA, the first letter, I have not got them for my products, but I've had friends who have clients that have had that. I actually had one client that did get that, and that was for this thing I wanted to tell you about. But so they then send you this letter and they say you need to fix it. And they actually do it like 3 times before you enforce something, before you get a call from them. Okay, right? And the reason for that is because our industry is so big, guys. Right? People think like the pharmaceutical industry is big. We're like 4 times bigger. than the pharmaceutical industry. And so there's just not enough people that the government has to actually enforce what they're doing. So they really rely on the manufacturer. So one of the reasons, one of the great things that when I told Veronica that I wanted to do this, she sent me this really cool YouTube video of this doctor who, is pretty well respected. I mean, she's like no joke. She's got like 1 million followers. She's got all these guests on her show and stuff. And she said some really good stuff on her YouTube. But she also said some stuff where I was like, dude, that's not even right. That's not even real. Okay, right? And pieces of that was about regulation. It was about ingredient sourcing and things like that. So, and I'll get to that in a second. But so basically what you have with regulation is this, okay, right? So you've got the FDA who says, okay, Jeevers, here's what we're going to do. We're going to regulate the type of ingredients that you can use. So we need to make sure that they're GRAS ingredients, generally regarded as safe ingredients. If those ingredients have not been used after 1994, okay, right? And in commercial use, you've got to prove to us that that ingredient is safe in the manner that you are going to put it into a product. So that's one thing that they do. They do some regulation as far as manufacturers, so your batch records and some of the ways that you manufacture your product, okay, right? So you've got the FDA regulating your ingredients that you can use and also your manufacturing and how they should be manufacturing. Then you've got your FTC. And your FTC is the one who is regulating your claims. So this is the issue that I had with one of my clients, okay, right? They were getting really on the envelope as some of the claims that they're making. So when you are in a dietary supplement world, you can make structure function claims. So you can say that we support healthy sleep or we support inflammation levels. But we can't make any disease claims. So we can't say that our product helps with insomnia. We can say things, that's why you'll notice some of the words that we use, you're kind of like, oh, that's a clever way to say anxiety, nervousness, okay, right? That's a clever way to say pain, relief. So we're able to kind of use some of these words that don't necessarily allow for some sort of like medical claim or disease claim. Because once we do that, then all of a sudden you're going to get the FDA or the FTC saying, hey, Jeevers, you're saying that your product helps with this type of disease or illness. So that means that you're categorizing yourself as a drug. And if that's the case, you've got to go down the drug processes rather than the supplement process. So we've gotten really good at using words that don't necessarily do that. We use a lot of mays and supports and helps. That's why we always have those sort of things, because then the FDA doesn't necessarily look at us so closely. Now, here's the thing, guys. Here's what I've learned. Is that, like I was saying earlier, is that even though all those rules are out there, they don't enforce them because they don't have, like I said, the manpower, woman power to do that, the person power to do that, okay, right? So basically what they do is they wait until you get really big, okay? So you'll kind of notice this, guys. So let me give you an example, like athletic greens, okay, right? If you saw the things that if you read the things that Athletic Greens would put on their label, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, it's significantly different than what they're putting on their label now. Okay, right? Their label is very clean, it's simple, they're not saying a lot and all that sort of stuff. Because basically what happened is that they were able to grow to such an extent using some words and saying some things and all that sort of stuff that were right on the envelope. And then all of a sudden, as soon as they kind of got to hit the radar, they kind of clean it all up. And let me tell you something, that is like a classic play that all of these companies do, okay, right? And so therefore, sometimes when I was at this conference called Eudaimonia in Miami, which was actually pretty cool. And it had all like the biohackers there. You know, you're walking around and it's like, oh, there's Gary Brecka, and there's like, Mark Hyman, and there's like, I'm just sitting next to Dr. Perlman and all that sort of stuff. Anyways, and so somebody brought up the thing to Dave Asprey about like, hey, listen, there's all of these claims and how does the industry handle that and all that sort of stuff. And his answer to, well, no, we're regulated by these claims and you can't say this and you can't say that. I'm like, no, Dave, like you can up until you get to a point in which someone's going to be looking at you and then you kind of clean it all up because that's just what ends up happening or whatever. And so anyways, guys, my main thing, I guess what I'm trying to explain to you is that even though there are regulations, there's a thing called the Duché Act, which is the Dietary Supplement Health Education Act that's in the FDA kind of set that regulates what we're doing. The main thing is that we are regulated as a food rather than as a drug. So therefore, it's a lot more open. It's a lot more lax. But even with some of the regulations that we have specifically from the ingredient side, from the claim side and the wording side, it's just very difficult to enforce those regulations when you're small, if you will. You know what I mean, right? Now, going on to the, now I'm going to go into the safety of ingredients. So people often ask me about two things with products, right? How do we regulate the safety and how do we regulate the efficacy? Okay, right? So with safety of ingredients, like I mentioned earlier, is that ingredients kind of have to be in this bucket of generally regarded as safe. And those ingredients are basically a manufacturer's library. So if you brought an ingredient to a manufacturer and it was a quality manufacturer, a good manufacturer, and by the way, you don't necessarily need to go to one of these manufacturers. It's not like the industry is saying every manufacturer has to have certain certifications. That's why you'll see some products that are manufactured in a way in which it's like, wait a second, this person is like almost, not really, but kind of making this in their garage. And they're putting a label on it and selling it to the point where literally it gets to a situation where then they start using a real manufacturer or whatever, okay, right? So the thing is that the ingredient safety is on that generally regarded as safe or whatever. It can't be a new novel ingredient. And if it does, you need to provide the safety studies and things like that. One of the things that it does not do, even with the ingredients, is regulate how much of it you can use. So they can give you kind of a safe harbor. So for example, caffeine. So with caffeine, there's a safe harbor saying, listen, if you're a cola-like beverage, then you can't we would recommend you not putting any more than 70 milligrams of caffeine in your cola. By the way, there is no safe harbor statement for energy drinks or drinks that are outside of the, classification as a cola. Whoops, sorry. Okay. And so therefore, if I put 600 milligrams of ashwagandha in a product, there's no regulation against that. Okay, right? Even though that is a not safe thing to do, there's no regulation against that until obviously it hurts somebody and then they get plenty of complaints and then my product is pulled off the market, but it's just the product. It's not necessarily saying that the ingredient and that dosage was dangerous or anything. What the other piece of it is people will ask me about efficacy, right? And this is a big thing, is how do we know that the product is going to work? That right there, nobody knows. Like, nobody knows. You don't know until you get the product out there. Like, you'd like to think that we do all of these studies beforehand, that we run these pilots and things like that. And I'm not saying that we don't. I'm saying that the vast majority of companies don't do that because it's a very kind of costly thing for us to do, right? For most of us. And then also it's something in which we just feel like there's not a need to do that because we feel the ingredients that we're using or the levels that we're using, we feel is safe or whatever, okay, right? And for us to actually do a study that is a real efficacy study, this is where I got to like get to a university. I got to pay them this large amount of money to kind of do a study to make sure that it's effective. And then the crazy thing is, what am I actually going to say? Because let's just say, like, I have a product, okay, right? It's a sleep product, okay, right? And let's say I do a real study with this to test the efficacy of this product, okay, right? And this product helps with sleep, obviously, or whatever, okay, right? The thing is that I can't even publish that study, because as soon as I publish that study, most of the time, that would warrant the FDA or the FTC to say, oh, wait a second, you did a study, you clearly were doing a study for some sort of benefit. And if you did that for that sort of benefit, then you must be, again, looking at your product as something to treat some sort of health issue. Okay, right? Now, what you could do, you might say, is like I did a study with Clemson University once, and I did it with looking at certain immune factors, okay, right? And so I had this product, it was a powdered multivitamin, and we gave it to these mice, and we put, blah, 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 okay, right? And so we could show like various types of biomarkers that were immune biomarkers elevated, okay, right? So we're like, this is great. So we can talk about that. So we can say, hey, listen, when taking this product, these biomarkers are enhanced. We didn't say that it would help your immune system. We didn't help that it would help you not to get sick. We didn't say anything. We got it out there. Within 6 months, the FDA said, you know what? You can't use that study. You're inferring that this product is going to help people to not be sick and all that sort of thing, right? So now we just spent whatever 168 grand to go do this study, and now we can't use it. So thing is, guys, is that everybody always wants nutraceuticals to have more studies, but it's difficult for us to do those studies. We can't oftentimes use those studies. And also when we do use those studies, we end up kind of getting in trouble for them and all that sort of stuff. So there's not a lot of ROI on it. And then the second piece of it is that if we are using a formulation and we're using ingredients that aren't necessarily unique or patented, somebody could just copy it. Like, we can't patent a formula, right? So we can't say that we're the only ones that are allowed to use this combination of vitamin D, vitamin K2, and quercetin or resveratrol or things like that. We can't do that. So therefore, it doesn't make any sense sometimes for a company to do that additional research or run those clinical studies because of the cost and the use and all that sort of stuff. Now, one of the things that you may see is you may see ingredients. So this is kind of one of the things that I talk about is that so ingredient sourcers will do a study on their ingredient. Let me give you an example of like a turmeric. Okay, right? There's a company called Zabinza. They're one of the leaders in turmeric. They're Indians. And so they've done a ton of study on their different curcumin sources. Okay, right? And they can show that certain curcumin sources or their curcumin sources have a greater amount of bioavailability. Doesn't mean that there's a greater amount of utilization, just a greater amount of bioavailability, okay, right? This is why you'll see certain ingredients have trademark names like Sensoril's ashwagandha, okay, right? Or Chromodex's NMR or something like the NR or whatever, right? Is that is when an ingredient has actually done their studies and it's for some level of safety study or some level of absorbability study or something like that. And then when we use that ingredient in our product, we have the ability to then leverage that study at a cost because those ingredients are oftentimes very expensive. That's why you don't see them in a lot of places or whatever. So I guess my main thing about the research, because I let it I get a lot of questions on like why our products or why products aren't more well researched. It's because there's a lot of limitations due to cost, because of the claims that we can or we can't make. There's no proprietary element when we do that for a product, especially if we're not making it a proprietary blend or something like that. And then a lot of money for really high-end studies are partly funded by the NIH. And the thing is that the NIH and a lot of these other organizations don't necessarily want to fund nutraceuticals because you're oftentimes not funding like their ingredients. Well, we want to fund an ingredient that may be like an herb or a spice, and because of that, there's so many different bioactives in that ingredient that it's hard for them. They like doing fractionated stuff. That's why when you look at pharmaceutical studies, they're doing fractionated. They pull out one extract, one active, one ingredient, and they see how that one thing performs, because then what they have the ability to do is take that ingredient, make like one little molecular change on it, and then make it theirs, patent that piece, and then sell it. We can't do that. So therefore that causes an issue or whatever. So one of the things that was on that YouTube that Veronica sent me is she was saying, well, guys, like, she said, most all the products that are out there in the market are made in China. So I don't know. I think she misunderstood that, because they're not. They're now. I would say that in a lot of ingredients come from China. Okay, right? A lot of ingredients come from India. A lot of ingredients come from Brazil. A lot of ingredients come from places that have a lot of land, by the way. Okay, especially if it's an herb or spice or plant or something like that. Now, saying that finished products are coming from China, that's just wrong. There are huge, huge manufacturing facilities all over the U.S. There's actually one of the biggest ones here in Arizona. It's called ANS, Arizona Nutritional Solutions. Okay, right? They're like gigantic. They do like all of Whole Foods' product line. I think they do Life Extension. They just have a Bloom, like everybody, okay, right? And so there's huge manufacturing out here. People don't need to go to China to manufacture their product or anywhere else. Now, I will say is that certain products like you might have heard of Colon Broom, or you've heard of Gruen gummies, some of these ones, AG1, okay, right? That all started internationally. They were international brands. They made them, and then they started shipping them here. But then as they grow, they are silly to manufacture the stuff over there. They manufacture it here. And now you've got all of these great manufacturers here. And by the way, all of those ingredients, and I kind of I know you can't see this very well, but like, here's an ingredient little spec sheet here, okay, right? And I was just trying to say to you is that even when people talk about ingredients, we're testing them. We test them for micros, we test them for heavy metals, we test them for all that sort of stuff. And so no matter where they're coming from, okay, right, we're testing them when they come into the States, especially again, when you're working with like a really quality manufacturer, which, most of the time that you would. Sorry, I'm just trying to. And so we do all that sort of testing. The thing that gets hard about testing finished product is when you're testing finished product, when it's like an herbal product, when it's vitamins and minerals, amino acids, those things are really easy to test for. You can test them through an HPLC and AOC and all that sort of stuff. But some of these other things, they're very expensive to test, or there is no testing for them. That's why you'll notice that when you go get it's called a certificate of analysis. And a certificate of analysis basically is something which every manufacturer gets. Here's a product that I have. It's a multivitamin. It shows all of the ingredients, and then it shows the testing method that they use to see how much of that ingredient was actually in the product post-production. Okay, right? But there are certain ingredients in that product that don't have a testing standard. So therefore, then it's just basically inputs. So therefore, it's kind of tough to find whether all products are necessarily going to have the ingredient that it says it's on there when it's not a vitamin, a mineral, or an amino acid, because there's just not a lot of testing capability for that, or it's like really expensive. On the manufacturing side, so here is the thing, guys, is that we aren't really where the onus has now become the last 10 years. The FDA, to try to make it easier, has tightened the regulations on manufacturing. So now they're actually putting the liability on the manufacturer. So they're saying that if they produce a product that doesn't have what it says it has on the label, even that they're making some claims that are a little bit, pushing the envelope, or they're using maybe an exaggerated expiration date or something like that. Before, the manufacturer didn't have any of that liability, or very little of that liability. Now they've got a ton of that liability. So therefore, you've got this way where the FDA basically said, hey, here's how we're going to do a better job of regulation, is rather than going after each company, let's go after a smaller group of people like the manufacturers, and then they can regulate every one of their clients. That's why it's probably pretty important, or it is important, to make sure that whatever product that you're recommending, the manufacturer has a higher level of certification. So the simplest certification that everyone gets is just a CGMP. So it's basically manufacturing products at good manufacturing practices, GMP. Okay, right? And there's a set of regulations around that. Okay, right? Now, if you want a higher end manufacturer, then you'll find a manufacturer that has like an OTC license. So this is a manufacturer who says, I could manufacture an over-the-counter drug, but I've chosen to use those standards to manufacture nutraceuticals. Okay, right? And then there's these kind of like other certifications like NSF. NSF is a certification that is used by a lot of sports groups, and that's why you'll see kind of NSF sports certified. Okay, right? So this is a group out of Michigan, and they basically will they've got a set of standards that they use for manufacturing that they have. So those are kind of honestly like the three ones. There's another one that kind of sits in between, but it's like an FDA registered manufacturing facility, which is a little bit more than the CGMP, but not as like as much as an OTC or whatever. Okay, right? So therefore, if you do that and you found a manufacturer or you found a product that's manufactured in a facility that has those regulations, you can feel really good about the fact of how that product was not only manufactured, but also how it was labeled as far as the ingredients on that label, and then also pretty good about how it is described on that label. Again, guys, that doesn't necessarily mean if there are other materials like their website or their brochures or things like that are saying something different. Little kind of fun note, you'll notice that a lot of these influencers, if you will, when they sell their supplements, and some of them are really big, they actually have two websites. They'll have a website that sells their supplements, and then they have another website that just is kind of like general kind of health information. Okay, right? The reason why they've done that is because any type of information that is attached to the product becomes the label. So therefore, you got to be careful if you wrote a blog and that blog was on the website that had your product, And if it said some things, and do remember, it doesn't even need to say that, for example, NODS helps with uh, providing you greater stage 3 and stage 4 sleep. Okay, right? It could say that, valerian root combined with GABA does those things, and it just so happens that GABA and valerian root are found in NODs. And so now they're going to say, whoa, that's part of the marketing material. You basically said that your product did that. So how they've kind of worked around it is they've created this other website over here, which is, whatever they call it, and they'll put all that education there, that GABA does this, valerian does that, the combination of valerian and GABA does this. And so you want to maybe look for a product that has that sort of thing. And then obviously you just go oftentimes looking for their website and you'll see that, blah, blah, blah. And so that's how they've kind of made that little bit of a workaround with some of those claims and messaging that they do or whatever. So that's on the manufacturing side. On the product side, so by the way, all those things that I was telling you about, the NSF, the CGMP, the OTC, all that sort of stuff, it's all about kind of how the product is manufactured. Okay, right? Now, another layer of this is also what you see on the label for manufacturing, for quality of, not even quality of product. It's basically saying the product doesn't have any additional contaminants. That's when you see things like USP. USP really, even though it has all of the things about ingredients and making sure it has the right amount, all that sort of stuff, USP is more about dissolving. That started as a certification used for tablets. So therefore, your product that you had a tablet because they used to coat tablets with wax, carnauba wax. Okay, right? And that's why people would take their tablet and they would say, oh, it's going out the same way that it came in, all that sort of stuff, right? And so then they used cellulose coatings and all that sort of stuff. But USP was all about dissolution, disintegration, how long it takes, blah, blah, blah. And so that's why you'll see USP on there. You'll see NSF. That's probably the biggest one that is on a lot of the labels. That's looking at banned ingredients, contaminants. It's making sure also that the product is manufactured in a certain way. It has a third-party test. So do remember, the FDA does not require any third-party tests. So they let the manufacturer do the testing. And secondly, there's no additional testing that needs to be done for contaminants or heavy metals or anything like that. They're more focused on testing of the label and label claim that it has to have what it says on the label or whatever. These other testing facilities are more focused on all of the additional things that may be. So for example, the manufacturer will be able to test for the fact that it has the 32 grams of plant protein, pea protein or whatever it is, okay, right? And they have that input. But they're not going to necessarily have to test for the fact that that plant protein has a certain level of heavy metals. Okay, right? And so that's where some of these other testing certifications that are product testing certifications, they're helpful or whatever. Okay, right? Last piece before I jump into kind of some of these ingredients and things like that is expiration dates. So this is interesting about expiration dates. So expiration dates, so generally, guys, is that the kind of recommendation or the law, if you will, right, says that your product has to meet label claim at the time of manufacturing. So it has to be 100, if it's 100 milligrams of vitamin C, it's got to be 100 milligrams right at the time of manufacturing, okay, right? Your expiration date, on the date of your expiration, it has to be around 80%. So it can have a breakdown of 20% kind of throughout the whole thing, okay, right? The other thing about expiration dates is they're not like you don't have to have them. So you're starting to see a lot of products that don't have expiration dates. They just have their lot number. Okay, right? On one hand, that's good. On the other hand, that's not good. So on one hand, the reason why it's good is that the product, when you think of expiration, you think of it spoiled, right? The product isn't necessarily spoiled. It's just that it's lost potency. Okay, right? And the thing is that this is why companies, and by the way, this is a little bit of a nuance of why you might see a product that might be the same product, meaning the same ingredient with the same label claim as another one, but it's more expensive. And you're like, why is this product like more expensive? And let's assume that they're not being shady or anything like that. It could be the fact that that product is using a higher overage than the other one, because it's going to say, hey, listen, by the time that this product expires 2 years, 3 years right now, we're going to make sure that our product is 100% of label claim, right? Rather than 80% of label claim. Or because we're not regulated and no one's testing our product, there's no stability test that we have to provide or anything like that, that we may not even be 80%. And so therefore, because do remember, guys, ingredients are expensive. I mean, obviously, you know this, okay, right? And so like vitamin C, if you put an overage of like 30 or 40%, because it's a water-soluble vitamin, it's going to break down very quickly. Like, who cares? Because vitamin C is not all that expensive. But if you put something like NMN or NR or like glutamine or glutathione, like that stuff's expensive. Like you adding another 10% or 20% on your product, like that's a significant cost, right? And so therefore people will kind of like be very careful about how much they put in there. And so therefore that is one of the things to kind of think about is these expiration dates. This is why I always tell people, listen, if you're going to buy a product, okay, right? Like use it within 3 months, okay, right? And side note too, by the way, you'll hear, not that you talk to me a lot, but if you do talk to me a lot, is that I always use this 90-day thing. And I use the 90-day thing for supplementation. This is a little bit off track, is that, so many people want to start a supplement routine or a nutrient routine, and they want it to be, amazing, and they want it to work like within a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. It just, Veronica and I were talking about this. It just doesn't work like that. Remember, guys, we're dealing with nutrients here. We're dealing with nutrition, okay, right? We're dealing with extracts of herbs and spices. And even though, like, I'm Indian, like, I believe in Eastern philosophy, I'm all Ayurvedic, I love all that sort of stuff. It's just, we can't build something as potent and powerful as a drug that works on such an immediate basis. If we did, we'd probably have some of the same shrapnel as what drugs do. So therefore, the thing about these types of nutrients that we use in our products, it takes 30 days for the body to truly kind of acclimate to what you're taking. Like literally, guys, if you get a result within 30 days, that's a huge surprise. Like usually the body takes something like that in, and if it's not used to it, like it's not used to ashwagandha isn't something that we're like built for, okay, right? We're not built for some vitamins and minerals maybe and all that sort of stuff, but they're not as powerful as some of the other stuff. The body's going to spend more time rejecting it. In the first 30 days, it's rejecting it. That's why you always hear of people being like, oh, I took this product and it gave me, I had to go to the bathroom all the time, right? Or it gave me a rash, or it gave me a headache or whatever. That's the body saying, dude, this is new to us. Like, this is not something that we've taken before. This is not the levels that we've taken before. We don't know what to do with this stuff. So we want to push it out and we want to get rid of it. Okay, right? And you get rid of it out of your pores. Okay, right? So you got that for the 30 days. After that 30 days, your next 30 days is really a point of recognition. So the body starts to be like, okay, now that you've given this to me consistently for 30 days, I'm going to start not rejecting it, but I'm going to recognize it. I'm going to like really figure out like what this thing is and what to kind of do with it. I won't do anything with it. I just want what to do with it. Okay, right? So that's like the next phase. And then the last 30 days is you get this utilization phase. And that utilization phase is when you really get the benefit. That's when all of a sudden you've given your body something for 60 days. It's been consistent. It's been at those levels consistently. And now it's saying, okay, I'm going to start to actually utilize this, because most of the time, guys, those nutrients are working with the body. It's not working for the body. And when you start working with the body, now all of a sudden you've got some other processes and things like that that are going to help with the utilization of that nutrient. And that's when you got to see the real benefit. And either you're going to see like an immediate like benefit, whatever you were looking for, or you're going to see it kind of trending in the right direction. That's how you got to really think about how you're taking supplementation in general. And in my opinion, all of the products that are formulated in this kind of safe way, where we're making sure of the ingredient dosage, we're making sure of the ingredient kind of synergy, the different types of ingredients that are coming together, the form that we're using it and how we're using it in that form. That's because I'm saying that those products are made in that safe manner, they have to work with this type of timeline, in my opinion. Okay, right? And so, anyways, that kind of that. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rip through some things real quick about just some marketing things that we will do that you just kind of might want to look for or whatever. Okay, right? So one of the things that I hear a lot about is proprietary blends. So this is like a big taboo, right? Oh my gosh, if you see a product that has a proprietary blend, run the other way, blah, 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 and all that sort of stuff. Hey, listen, I'm not saying that that's not true, that, people will use a proprietary blend to fool you into thinking that your product has more of something than it does. Let me give you a little example. Like one of the hottest products right now is this Gruen gummy. Okay, right? I don't know how many of you guys have seen it, but like it's like this little, green, gummy bear, and it has 60 superfoods. And people are like, I just met this gal the other day who was an attorney who was really sharp, and she's like, oh, I'm cool with my vegetables. I just eat these gummies because it has 60 super. I'm like, sister, how could you actually think that you're getting all of the servings of your vegetables in these gummies, right? It's written the 60 superfoods and stuff. But one of the things is that you'll notice that on their label, that when they list the amount of the vegetable blend, okay, right, or the superfood blend, it's pretty significant. Like it's a lot more than any other gummy out there, okay, right? It's almost as close as to like a powdered AG green, AG1 or whatever. Well, the interesting thing that they did is that one of the things that you need when you have a gummy, you need a binder. And that binder is usually a fibrous binder, okay, right? A tapioca starch or something like that, okay, right? Well, I've got a gummy. And when I make my gummy, I don't list tapioca starch. I don't list the fiber in the blend. Like that's another ingredient. It's not a really active ingredient. But if I did list it in the active ingredient, you know what I could do? I could add about 3 grams into the whole blend. And so now you're thinking you got this like big blend. So sometimes that's the thing with, these proprietary blends is they're adding ingredients in there in which it's bulking up the whole thing, making you think that you've got a larger amount of what is in the blend than you actually have. Okay, right? So that's not a good thing. Okay, right? And so that's why it's gotten a big, it has a bad rep, if you will, when you're using proprietary blends, because you don't know how much of each of the ingredients that are in there. And that's a really, really valuable way to figure out, the value of that supplement. Like, are you getting more? How much are you getting of the L-theanine and all that sort of stuff if it's in there? And then also it helps you to kind of figure out, if you're taking some other supplements, which is a really hard thing to do, by the way, other supplements, you're trying to make sure that you're not adding a dose on top of a dose on top of a dose. So I totally get that. But the other reason why people use proprietary blends that are doing it the right way is simply because we're just trying to protect our formula. is because, nothing is protected. Like I was saying earlier, I can't patent my formula. I can't, trademark it. I can't do any of that sort of stuff. And so therefore, if all of a sudden I have this like fully transparent, label, then I'm kind of stuck because someone could literally just make my exact formula, and therefore that's why you see a lot of companies spending a lot more on their brand than they are even on their product, because the only thing that you can protect is your brand. You can say, well, hey, listen, I'm not picking on that. Let's pick on somebody else, I am 8, okay, right? That's another product that's big out there or whatever. Well, that one, in theory, actually not in theory, like you could literally make that product, like just remake it. Like I actually use the manufacturer that makes I am 8, and I could literally just make that whole thing, okay, right? Because it's so thing. But the thing is that IMA could say, no, that's ours. Like we were the first ones. We were the ones that made it. Like if you don't get IMA, then you're not getting the quality, blah, 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 and all that sort of stuff. So that's why proprietary blends exist. That's why they're good, and that's why they're bad. From a consumer end, it really makes it so that the proprietary blend is much more valuable for you to break out than not, or whatever. The ingredient listing I talked about, potency extracts. I think this is a thing that gets missed a lot, is that, if I use, let me use a simple example, like turmeric, okay, right? So turmeric, many of you probably know, the most active component in turmeric, the one that's actually doing the work, is the curcuminoids. And if you have a turmeric extract that you're using that has a higher level of curcuminoids, because you can buy it at 50%, you can buy it at 90%, you can buy it at 95 and 97%. Like that's when I go buy that ingredient, I can buy it in all those different things. Well, if you're not necessarily looking closely at what extract and potency that you're getting, you might be thinking that you're getting a better product than you actually do, because you're only looking at the total amount of that curcumin. And then there's little side note, then there's little nuances, and that's what I was saying earlier. My other talk is more about saying, okay, listen, if you are going to get that turmeric or that curcumin, there's actually some clinical research that shows that if you add a certain extract of black pepper, you can increase the absorption of that curcumin by almost 2,000%. Now, by the way, that means that you can increase the absorption, doesn't mean that you're going to utilize all of that, because that's a different conversation of how your body actually reacts and what it needs and all that sort of stuff. So I think what you're going to start to see more of, by the way, is these ingredients that are going to be trademarked and kind of stamp identified to certain actives, meaning potency, that would provide you a greater benefit or value. Another thing that I get is about organic and non-organic ingredients. Honestly, the cost between organic and non-organic ingredients, there's not a significant difference. And the reason why there's not a significant difference is because many of the ingredients that you would worry about or are organic or non-organic, they're already organic. So a lot of herbs, a lot of spices, a lot of all that sort of stuff, they already have, as you guys probably know, their own insecticides, pesticides, all that sort of stuff. Their terpene profiles allow for that sort of thing. And so therefore, they're already organic. And there's some ingredients you can't even really get organic. And so therefore making a choice, in my opinion, making a choice of whether those types of ingredients are organic or non-organic doesn't really play that much into the value that you're going to get. And do remember is that we're already going to do a pretty high level of testing with those types of ingredients, as long as you're working with the quality manufacturer and all that sort of stuff, to make sure that there's none of those contaminants in any levels that would be kind of, dangerous or not. But it's all a preference for people or whatever. I think I only note this because this was on the YouTube thing where she was talking about, well, that's why I switched to whole food supplements and I only get my products from Whole Foods and such. Listen, I'm not saying that's a bad idea. I think it's fantastic. Like if you could get all the vitamin C that you want from amla fruit or from oranges or from whatever, and they just powdered it and then it pulls out the vitamin C. Great. It's awesome because it's no different than the vitamin C that I'm making in a lab. Like literally, it's the same exact thing. The only difference is that when you are powdering that amla, you are powdering that orange or whatever, you are getting some of those other bioactive components, some of those other polyphenols and things like that. And that could be a value. Now, I will say is that most of those ingredients, when they do come from whole foods, they're going to be spiking it a little bit with more of that vitamin C. So they can do that and still list that product is coming from a whole food ingredient base. So you kind of have to be careful in the sense of like, okay, they did get the vitamin C from amla fruit. That amla is the highest concentration of vitamin C. That's why I always say that from amla fruit, but it also has additional vitamin C to make the label claim that it's trying to make. Because I will tell you, whole food ingredients will break down faster than that fragmented vitamin C or vitamin D or vitamin E or whatever. It takes on more moisture. Because it takes on more moisture, it gets more breakdown. So just to let you know on that. And then the other thing, which you guys probably already know, but like I do kind of always talk about dosages and payloads and stuff. Like people don't pay as much attention to the fact that, hey, listen, you really have to look at how much of a certain ingredient is in a product, because sometimes they get all enamored with the fact that that product is in a certain form and they think, well, hey, listen, I'm getting my calcium from this little chocolate bite or whatever it is, and so that's fantastic, I'm getting my calcium. But they never really look at how much calcium that they're getting, because all of these different forms, whether it's tablets, soft gels, capsules, liquids, gummies, gums, whatever we only have a certain amount of space to put those ingredients in. And therefore, if the space, like in a gummy, is a very small space, we might be packing stuff in, but we don't get you the dosage that you actually need. And then one of the other things too, guys, is that the reason why getting your nutrients from tablets, from capsules, from soft gels, from powders is oftentimes better is because it doesn't need any additional processing that would create breakdown. So like when I make something in a gum, or when I make something in a liquid, when I make something in a gummy, that takes on other processes that further break down the ingredients when you're making the product or whatever. And then I've got like, I have an integrity issue of really how much is actually in there and all that sort of stuff. So anyways, guys, I know this was a lot of stuff. It was a bit, hopefully it was valuable for, you. But I'd love to see if you guys have questions, because I think I might be able to be more articulate in that fashion than just talking to you. So I'll just unmute everybody. Is that all right? Is that cool? Or
yeah.
So I guess what I did is I am allowing participants to unmute themselves. So you can do that. And so if you have a question, right? Is this how we want to do it? Or
I can step in. I have just a question about, I'm glad to hear about the proprietary, because that's always been confusing to me. I always have an issue, there's with natural flavors. It's an annoyance to me. And I know they can be micro amounts of this stupid thing, but I want to know, if you're bothering to put that down there, tell me what that is. They won't. And if I don't see it, I won't buy it, because I don't even trust what that is. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, okay, awesome. So here's the thing, right? So there's like these gigantic flavor houses in the country, okay, right? Fona, Givaudan, Simrise, all these sort of places, okay, right? And so natural flavors is me taking a raspberry, okay, right? And if I can literally extract just the flavoring molecules in that raspberry, they kind of have this fun little thing at conferences where they'll give you a raspberry and you'll take it and it'll taste like a blueberry. And you'll be like, what? And they basically took like a blueberry, flavoring, and they shoved it in the raspberry because they pulled all the raspberry flavoring out of it. Okay, right? And so, because do remember, guys, at the very end of the day, so sorry, it says once this user accepts and requests, you can meet and chat. I'm just going to place add contact, I guess.
No worries.
Anyways, the thing about now, remember, everything's a molecule. Everything's a molecule, right? And so it's just that when you do natural flavorings, I'm just extracting that molecule from a natural substance. When I make an artificial flavor, I can do two things. I can make that flavor in that same molecule, okay, right? Right? So now I've got that. And the reason why they do that, Kathleen, is because there's not availability enough of the natural source. And so then they just make it themselves, okay, right? But then what they'll also do sometimes, and this is where the rub is for artificial flavors, is they'll kind of add like a hydroxyl group. And when they add that, now all of a sudden they have an intensity of that flavor, right? And so this is where now I'm getting something that, I'm not saying, Kathleen, that it's unsafe. I'm just saying that it's different than what the molecule was when I extracted it from that raspberry, if you will. You know what I mean, right? And so I guess what I'm trying to explain to you is that, I know you hear of the MSG and you hear of all of these sort of things. It's just, Kathleen, it's just not, it was true at one time. It's not true anymore. They don't do that for natural flavoring. They might do some shady stuff for artificial flavoring. Does that make sense?
So if it says natural flavors, it is from a product, a real product all the time. That's how they do it. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Why, guys? Why bother? Why do I need that in a capsule? I don't need to know that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. The only reason why you'd never be putting into a capsule. There is one company, Ritual, who does some of that sort of stuff, right? And what they're doing that for is because it's great. It's great marketing. Let me give an example, okay? Right? Their EFA. People like I like taking EFAs, okay? Right? Essential fatty acids, okay? Right? But they kind of have that fishy taste a little bit, right? If you're taking a high concentrate or whatever, they'll coat theirs with lemon, right? And so now when I open up the bottle, I smell this lemon. It makes me it smells good, so it makes me feel good, right? And then I take it. It's got a lemon coating on the soft gel, so it tastes like lemon. And now I am maybe less apt to be like, oh, when I have this burp or something like that, it tastes so bad, if you will. It's more of a marketing thing, if you will. You know what I mean?
Right. And I've seen that, but then they say it's lemon. They don't say, 25, who knows what natural flavors. I always thought that MSG was in most of that because I'm real super sensitive to MSG.
Yeah.
I remember the day when they used to pour that on the Chinese food and it was like, oh my God, such bad headaches all the time from it. I stay away from anything that looks like it makes no sense to me. If I can't describe it, if they can't have the bother to tell me what the ingredient is, I just not. Anyway, I get real kind of weird about all that. So I'm turning labels all the time and I'm looking at.
The great thing about you, Kathleen, is that you're not like the general public. The general public is like, this is the conversation that I have with people who are like, why did you put sugar in this product? Like I get beat up if I put sugar in the product. I get beat up if I put stevia in the product. I get beat up if I put allulose in the product. I get beat up if it's got too much sugar from a natural source. Like I can't win. Okay, right? And what I say to them is I say, because most of you won't take it if it's not pleasant. What you say and what you do are two different things. You're like, oh no, I don't need any of that. It doesn't matter the taste. Like I just want stuff that's clean and natural, and I'll take, and you know what? You'll do it. You will do it, but you'll do it for about a week, and then you'll be like, man, I missed that one serving, and actually, I didn't really like that taste anyways. And then you give it 2 days and 3 days, and then you don't take it anymore. And then that's my fault too. You know what I mean? Right. So it's just like, so you don't care about the taste of things like me. I'm not emotionally attached to that. I just want the health benefit from you. So you can find super clean stuff that might not taste all that great, you know?
Okay. I had a couple questions. This is Carol. First of all, if you would repeat, I know this is from your nuance talk, but if you, because I thought it was so interesting, if you would repeat, when you're taking collagen, take vitamin C and what else? What was the other thing?
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so here's the thing, Carol. So this was why you'll notice that a lot of really good formulations will at least have vitamin C with their collagen peptides. Okay, right? So, Carol, we've got collagen, which is the bone broth. Okay, right? And then we have collagen peptides, which is basically taking that collagen and then hydrolyzing it, meaning chopping it up into tiny little pieces and making them peptides because they're they're more bioavailable, they're easier to digest and all that sort of stuff. Okay, right? And so the thing is that when you consume collagen and collagen peptides, okay, right? Your body needs to reassemble that collagen. So it needs to reassemble it back into that original collagen that kind of came from the bone broth, if you will. Okay, right? Well, that reassembly needs cofactors. And the main cofactors that it needs, number one, vitamin C, copper, vitamin C, copper, and oh my gosh, I forgot the other one. I just blanked. Vitamin C and copper for sure.
I wrote down zinc.
Zinc.
I was gonna say-
Thank you. God, thank goodness.
Zinc?
Yes, zinc. Sorry. And so if you do that, you now have these, because remember, the thing about minerals is we always talk about minerals as like, oh, they're bone health, they're connective tissue, they're all that sort of stuff. They are, but they're amazing cofactors. They're responsible as catalysts and cofactors for every chemical reaction. This is why a lot of individuals, talk about trace and ultra trace minerals and things like that, and the value of them, and the fact that you should be getting them from your plant foods, but because of the way that we grow and process and store food and all that sort of stuff. And so anyways, the whole point of that is collagen is a perfect example of if you don't have those cofactors, you're not going to be able to reassemble that collagen as effectively. Does that help?
Beautiful. Yes, that totally answers my question. And then attached to that was, you also said with vitamin D, take K2 and something else. And what was that?
Yeah, so the reason, so vitamins and minerals, this is the reason why food is incredible. And by the way, guys, even though I'm a supplement person, that's like the last thing I want people to take. Like, I want people to first of all, eat as healthy as they possibly can. I want them to have like a great mindset and be positive and be fun and do all that sort of stuff. I want them to exercise and move. And then when they've done all that sort of stuff, if they need a little bit of a boost, then take some supplements. You know what I mean, right? A supplement to an existing wonderful lifestyle. It isn't supposed to be the lifestyle. Okay, right? And so in saying that, supplements or food, the reason why that works so well is that they've done a really nice job of bringing nutrients together so they kind of have this synergistic effect, making 2 and 2 5 rather than 2 and 2 4 or whatever. Okay, right? So with vitamin D, one of the valuable elements of vitamin D that I was just kind of noting is for connective tissue health, for bone health, for ligaments, for tendons, for things like that. Well, if you want to really get the maximum for that when you're dealing with vitamin D, you'd want to make sure that you're pairing it with calcium and vitamin K, right? Vitamin K2.
Okay,
right?
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to know. I just missed that. It was calcium and K2. Okay, excellent. Yeah. Good. Couple more.
Yeah.
I'm really curious what your thoughts are. There's a company called Cellcore. Do you know it? Cellcore?
Cellcore.
Cellcore.
I think I've seen them.
Now I'm trying to remember the name of the man because he does talks and stuff, and I'm blanking. But one of the things that he talks about is humic shale.
I love it.
fulvic
I've seen
acid.
Cellcore. Yep.
Okay, you see it? Okay, great. And he has this bioactive carbon technology, and I have found that it is doing something more. Like there's this product, BCATP, which is biocarbon adenosine triphosphate, and it's for mitochondrial production, and it really does work. I was like surprised. I was like, oh my god, it is. I was feeling that I had more energy without any kind of jittery, I can't handle caffeine, I can't handle stimulants, but this gave me energy without that overstimulated thing. And he's really big on humic shale with the humic and fulvic acid, but I don't know what that means, and I'm hoping you do. Can
Oh
you
my
tell
gosh.
me about fulvic
I love
acid?
it. I love.
Okay,
I've
great.
been. Yeah. One of
Right.
my mentors is. He is known as the father of minerals and trace and ultra trace minerals. His name's Dr. Joel Wallach, and so I've been using. I almost use. I'll either use humic shale, I'll use fulvic acid, or I'll use like sea-based minerals. So like there's a brand called Aquaman, there's Trace Mineral Research out of Salt Lake and such. And so big, huge fan. So basically here's the deal. Just think of them as very concentrated amounts of trace and ultra trace minerals. Okay, right?
Oh,
Okay.
they're very concentrated amounts of trace minerals. Oh, okay.
Yep, that's all they are. That's all they are. Think of humic shale is basically plant material, okay, right? That is prehistoric plant material. So basically plants that have just decomposed on top of each other, on top of each other, on top of each other, on top of each other. You can literally go and drive to Utah, right? And go to a place, I've been there, and where they mine the humic shale, okay, right? And you go in the mine and you like pull it and it falls right off the side of the mountain, and it's this dirt, if you will, okay, right? And it's just basically plants that have just composed on top of each other, pressed, decompressed, and now it's just the minerals. Because do remember, the plant material has the minerals, right? So basically, plants pull inorganic minerals from the soil. Through photosynthesis, they turn that inorganic material into organic material that then is in the plant, and then you consume the plant. That's why it's safe for you to consume the plant in the minerals that are in the plant, but not so safe for you to consume the minerals that are in the soil, right? And so
Interesting.
that's all that's doing, right? And fulvic acid's just the same thing.
And what is fulvic acid? Oh, it's the same thing as humic shale.
Same.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, you'd wonder why other people don't use it if it's so potent and if it's such a great thing.
Carol?
Because people just sometimes they're not appreciating the value of minerals, you know what I mean, right? And the minerals that they think in their head are like calcium, sodium, potassium, magnesium, blah blah blah. We're talking about like all of the trace and ultra trace minerals. I mean, stuff that is like gold and silver and copper and stuff. You know, that's not like people are like, oh, I'm ingesting gold, I'm ingesting silver. Like that's not good for me, you know.
Yeah, Carol, I posted a few months ago on the think tank group about beam minerals, which is fulvic and humic. It's just another company that sources that same idea. And they have, if you're interested, they have a whole, you can call and talk to them and they explain in depth the difference of the different kind of minerals and things like that. But I think that is a new trend that I'm seeing as well, of this sort of like go beyond just the elemental minerals and put them into this more what they call bioavailable form.
Because it's in a natural matrix, right? So it's almost like saying, okay, I could take calcium, calcium carbonate, calcium citrate, calcium malate, or I could take microcrystalline hydroxyapatite, which is kind of like bone powder. And then I could get my calcium from the bone powder. But the beautiful thing about that is that calcium is in a matrix of something that is already my body recognizes. Well, that's the thing about these minerals is these minerals are already in this wonderful matrix. So therefore, your body's going to recognize it better. It'll absorb it better. It'll utilize it better, and blah blah blah. And therefore, you don't get any like possibly, massive imbalances. You know what I mean, right?
Right.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. And then last question, although I could keep asking more, but I won't. Last question is, I'm sure you've heard of full script.
Yeah. Yep.
Full script, right? And one of the reasons I work with full script is, first of all, I get discounts because I'm a holistic health practitioner. But
Yeah.
the other reason is because they do really thorough investigations around what they carry. So I trust whatever it is that they carry. And what I was going to ask you is like, do you know what criteria they're using when they say, when they vet things? Because they don't allow all they won't carry a lot of companies. They carry like Thorn and Designs for Health, and so do you know what kind of criteria, or maybe I should just ask them, but.
Yep, no worries. You can easily do that. They'll tell you. I know them as well too, because I was trying to get my products into full scripts as well too. Right? And so they sent me the whole library of stuff. It's really good, and they have great standards. They make you do third-party testing. They have you do third-party testing on I think at least 3 times a year. So yeah, they do a nice job of making sure they do a nice, they're kind of like that group I was telling you with the USP, NSF, stuff. They're going to say, hey, listen, this product says what it has on the label and that it doesn't have any contaminants. That's their 2 main things, right? Again, as far as efficacy, they don't know because everybody's different. That's why, Carol, you saying, hey, Jeevers, hey, I got this product and it works great for me and I love it. Let's just say you said this. But hey, I'd like to try yours. I'd say, Carol, no, you're not trying mine. You got already something that works. You don't need to mess with anything that may not work. You know what I mean? Everybody's body is different. If it takes to it, go with it. As long as it's a good product,
Can I segue a question off of this? So
yeah.
I really like full script for that reason, because I do feel like at least they are getting their products from the manufacturers where they're supposed to, as opposed to what I'm hearing and seeing a lot on people buying on Amazon is this carbon copy product. What people don't realize is anybody can take a product on Amazon, take your exact labeling, recreate it, put whatever they want on it and sell it. And like you said, it's not regulated. And so I've seen that where patients are like, oh, the powder tastes different. It smells different. This is different. That's different. And then if you look closer, it's not the same label or it's not the same product. And I think that is a thing that I'm getting very leery about suggesting to my clients of them shopping a cheaper price and getting it on Amazon. Any thoughts on that, Jeevers?
Yeah. There was a whole kind of post on this from a few people talking about how, Amazon has really tightened up, by the way, some of their requirements for their product. But it still is, like you said, is that, even authorized resellers of a certain product may not be, using the exact same product as what's coming from the manufacturer. So Amazon just is not a very good place anymore, in my opinion, if you're looking for really high-end products, like you mentioned, like the Thorns and the Pure Encapsulations, the Life Extensions and things like that. If it were me and I was purchasing those products, I either buy it from a full script, I can't, but you can, or I buy it directly from the company. One thing, just to know, it's nothing bad, okay, right? But it's just something to know, okay, right? So if you were to find a company that is not on full scripts, and they are doing all of that testing. They could be doing all of that testing. But the thing with full scripts is that, which is okay, they're into business, okay, right? And so one of the requirements of full scripts is that you have a group of practitioners to sell to, okay, right? And if you don't have enough practitioners to sell to, they're not understandably going to allow you to be one of the products in full scripts because they got to buy the inventory, they got to do all that sort of stuff. So just know that, yes, I want you to buy most of the things that you need from full scripts. I'm just saying that if you do find a company that doesn't, it may be because of the fact that they're not a practitioner brand, so they're not a real value to full scripts because they're not selling to the general public. And also there is a bit of a margin thing too, where usually supplements, like most companies like to have about 6 to 8 times margin. Okay, right? That pays for their marketing, that pays for and all that sort of stuff. If you've got a product that's less than that, then you don't even have the ability to really get into a place like full scripts because you just don't make any money. And there are companies nowadays who are like, hey, listen, I'd rather take less margin and sell at a better price, but build a higher quality product. I've got a friend, Veronica, knows him real well, who's one of probably the biggest leaders out there. He's one of those guys. He's like, I'm going to have 4.5 times margin. I'm going to build a really, really great product, sell it at a reasonable price. And that's it. You know what I mean? So.
Yep. Any other questions out there in the group? Wow. I think, Steve, you have me stunned. I think my other big question is, because you've touched on it in different things, and I understand manufacturers and then people are looking at the ingredients to make sure they don't have lead and cadmium in them, but I'm seeing so many posts now about lead and cadmium in our coffees and our chocolates and our supplements and things like that. Is this something that sort of, do you think it's always been there, or is there a way to look for it? What are your thoughts about this sort of awareness around lead and cadmium and heavy metal toxicities?
Yeah, awesome. So here's the thing, guys, is that it's really easy to test for those sort of things in a supplement that is that's made with vitamins and less of whole food products, less of whole food ingredients. Okay, right? But testing for food, like you mentioned, coffee. Okay, right? Coffee, food has, guys, that does not have a lot of regulation. Okay, right? Like that sort of stuff is food. My dad's a food scientist. He's a food chemist. Their regulation stuff is nowhere close to what supplementation is. Okay, right? So that's why you're seeing a lot of those sort of things happening with foods. Now, the other place that you're kind of seeing it is you're seeing it in like protein powders, because that's like a food. You know what I mean? It's really dried food. Right. Okay, right? That's what we're doing with a protein powder, is it's dried food. Okay, right? And then you're going to see it in ingredients. Now, this, by the way, is when you start buying from Amazon or some of these shady places or whatever. Okay, right? Like the silagens, and you're buying things that are really heavily plant-based, and they're heavily plant-based in things that would be something that would have a higher heavy metal content. You know what I mean? Right? And so I think that even with green tea and things like that, you just do have to be very, very careful. And it's not very expensive at all, by the way, to test for heavy metals. So if a company has those types of products that are prone to have heavy metals, and they are not testing and not putting it on the website, they're doing it for a reason.
Okay. So is that like you're talking about the bentonite clay, certain things like zeolite, where they might have some of those heavy metals along with them, because that's where they're pulling them from? These places where they would have such compounds.
Exactly, buddy. Those are like so prone to having that heavy metal content because of, like I was saying earlier. Remember, Doc, you've got inorganic material, right, that needs to be organic, and there's natural processes that do that. So if all of a sudden I'm mining that stuff and I'm not doing it properly, and then I'm not doing the extraction properly, I'm going to pull those heavy metals into the product. That's like Jeff. You could do that with even what we were talking about with humic shale and fulvic acid and all that sort of stuff. Because you've got to, they're not taking it straight out of the ground and not doing any processing. There has to be an extraction group. They got to clean it up, you know?
Right. Well, the zoologic minerals, I think he has lead in some, and it's labeled lead, like in his product, but it's bound to something, so it might not be as problematic. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
Oh yeah, well, funny you mention that.
minerals.
I'm actually in Young Jeopardy's offices right now. I actually office out of Young.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
It's a good product. I've used it.
That's how much I know him.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome. I did have a question about the TM, like ours. So, for instance, there's a supplement with citicoline, CITID, whatever citicoline, however you spell it. But and there's a one particular brand or product where you're saying, you can't patent it, but you can trademark these things, right? So, for instance, Cognizant, they've done a lot of studies on it and stuff to back it up that it's effective. Cognizant's more effective than, say, some other brand that has citicoline in it. So, like, how does that, do you know, like, how that works, or, like, is that, I don't know if you can elaborate on that.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. Okay. So, Jeff, this is what I'm saying. I think you're going to see a lot more of. Okay. Right. I think you're going to see a lot more of these ingredient sourcers. So we buy our ingredients from these ingredient houses. Okay. Right. And there's all these different ingredient houses. Okay. Right. We're either going to buy it from an ingredient house like Zabinza or Chromadex or those guys, or we'll buy it from a distributor. So, for example, like the hottest thing right now is BLG, beta-lactoglobulin. It's this protein that's super high in leucine, and you can put it in a little shot, and people drink it. It's like, hey, right? Well, those two companies, they're European companies, okay, right? And so the only way to get those is from a distributor here in the U.S. They've hired a distributor, and you buy them, okay, whatever, right? You're going to see a lot of those companies now who will take a hot ingredient and they'll do a study on that ingredient. Okay, right? Now, Jeff, they're only going to do that study if they have an ingredient that they will increase the potency of that ingredient, right? So, for example, like I was using the black pepper extract I was telling you about, okay, right? So, if you look on supplements that have curcumin, resveratrol, CoQ10, iron, vitamin B6. Those ingredients have shown in clinical studies that if you add this specialized extract of black pepper, that is a 95% extract of piperine, it increases the absorption, okay, right? So what Zabinza did was they said, okay, listen, we found this we found this effect with piperine. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a super high extract, 95%. We're going to call it bioperine, and then we're going to trademark it. And now, but Jeff, I could go to DSM and I could buy a 95% extract of black pepper that's piperine. The same thing, okay? But it's not trademarked. And what they're going to do is they're going to promote the heck out of bioperine so that you will say, well, whoa, Jeevers, like your product isn't going to be as good because it doesn't have the bioperine. You just have a regular 95% extract of piperine. So you'll see a lot of that done so that we can leverage that research or leverage that messaging. Does that help?
That kind of goes back to like what you were saying. So you do a study or something to support it, but then somebody just takes that same thing and puts it in theirs, and then you're basically marketing for them in essence. Is kind of what you're saying.
Yes.
So that because like they trademark it, but then somebody who's the consumer like myself, I'll look at it like, I don't care if it says Cognizant as long as it has 95% citicoline that I think is effective. Then why would I going to pay more for the Cognizant TM or whatever registered? If as long as it has what you're saying, it's the same thing, basically. Is that what
It's like Jeff.
So-
It's like me buying Sensoril, which is an ashwagandha extract from that's a trademark one, and I think that's like $1,300 a kilo, when I could buy the same one with the same extract and everything for like $450 a kilo, right? And so I'm like,
And it is the same. They are the same.
it's the same.
Okay. Cool. Well, that was the other thing. That was my question about it too. So thank you.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
helpful. All right.
So I guess
So there's
on
some
that,
marketing. It's
for
marketing.
that question on
Marketing.
the label, right? You just need to make sure that the percentages or the extracts or the things match.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're not lying, right? Because they could be lying, right? I don't know.
That's true too. Yeah. Great point. We're thinking everyone's telling the truth, right, Jeff? That's what we all do, right?
No. I know they're not, because I test all the products. For any product that I do, I always see if it's working for me before I go recommend to somebody else.
Yeah.
Because it's like, because I taken some that were like, no, not so good. So I was like, don't take that one, take this one.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes, Jeff, the reason why that's so valuable is because, like a lot of times people are like, well, so is this product going to work better than this one?
Yeah.
And Jeff, the thing is that like, I don't know. Like all we can do as formulators is try to build the best product that has the greatest likelihood to work for you. But we don't know, because Jeff, I'll tell you what, there has been plenty of times in my 20 years where someone has shown me a formulation and I'm like, dude, how can this work? Like, there's no value in this thing. And they're like, I've taken this thing and I can walk up the stairs now. My knees don't hurt. Like, and I'm like, and they're like, did you think I should change? I'm like, no, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
This thing
Placebo
is
effect
working for
is
you.
kicking in. Placebo is working. Don't worry about it as long as it works.
what was the whole point? Was the whole point of walking up the stairs, getting up the stairs? You've done that. So
Right.
go,
So
run up
Gina,
there.
that leads me to the question, and maybe you can answer. When do you know you've sort of lived the life of that supplement and you need to stop taking it or take a break and come back to it? Is that a valued add to any of this?
Yeah, you know what is that most supplements or most nutraceutical, you're not cycling off of it. You're not cycling off of it.
Okay.
What you are doing though is that you might have taken something, and let's say it was for the excess inflammation that your body is producing and that's causing you issue or whatever. And all of a sudden you've taken it and you don't, like, now all of a sudden how you figured out that you had that excess inflammation is no longer there, right? And now it's like, whoa, dude, the whole point of taking this thing was getting my body back up to baseline so it could do all of the things that it naturally can do, right? So now let's see if I don't need it anymore. You don't want to be dependent on any supplement, right? The only reason why you're taking a supplement is because you have chosen a lifestyle choice that would require you to do so. Let me give you an example, okay, right? Like I take 5 things. If you want to know, I take 5 things. These are the consistent 5 things that I take. I take protein, I take fiber, I take essential fatty acids, I take a really good multivitamin, and I take creatine. Like those are my 5 things, okay, right? The reason why I've taken the first 3 is because those are just food. And unfortunately, it's hard for me to get the 200 grams of protein in my diet on a daily basis, eating just food. So I got to get it from a supplement. I got to get some powder, okay? I got to drink it. I got to drink at least 50 grams of it, okay, right? I'm a big believer in fiber. I love fiber, but I eat so many vegetables, and I personally am trying to get to 40 to 45 grams a day. That's hard. So I've made lifestyle choices that have caused me to take those supplements on a consistent basis. You know what I mean? Right? And but you shouldn't have to if you're going to make the effort in, just eating more food, Jeevers, you know what I mean? Right? Or whatever, you know what I mean? Right? Yeah.
Thank you. That I think that's valuable to note, because like me as a practitioner and having had different health challenges, like my cabinet's full of a lot of things where I'm like, well, at least I know it might be at 50% potency. I don't have to throw it away, because someday if somebody needs it, I have it. But we can collect as we try different things. I want to try things before I recommend them, like Jeff was saying. And now you're like, well, what do I do with all these things if I don't need them? Or should I just throw them in and take them sometimes or not? But it's valuable to kind of say, like, get myself back to baseline, test, do I need it or not? Look at my lifestyle choices, look at the challenges each person's health history has. But I think it'd be a fun challenge so that when people come back and watch this think tank and those here, I think on our Facebook, like, people maybe put the top 10 supplements you're taking. Let's look and see, hear what the trends are, what people like, what brands you like, because I think that would be a cool, fun challenge. So we'll have to circle back and see if people take the bait.
Yeah, one of the things that was awesome about that suggestion is that if you wanted, and it's okay, guys. I mean, I'd love to be back and talk more, but I don't know if it was useful, if it wasn't useful, But if you're like, hey, listen, these are the top supplements that people are taking. Like, hey, Jeevers, like, let's dig into each of them and let's like show them like how best to what to look for in those supplements and how not to get, that's what I did with those ladies is I basically said, you gals are taking these main supplements. Let me tell you, this is what you should be looking for. This is how you can use them best. This is what you should expect, all that sort of stuff. Like, I totally do that, it's fun. Yeah.
I think we need a series. Absolutely. You are 1,000% welcome back and to break down. And let's see, especially like, let's do this challenge, see what things people are taking, look at them and break it down into a cluster. I think that would be super awesome. We're getting little things popping up on the screen here. Everybody can send like some thumbs up, but I mean, there's so many people that aren't watching this that are coming back. They're like, is this being recorded? And I'm like, don't worry, it is. Because this is amazing. What were you going to say, Carol or Kathleen?
And it's really amazing that you say that as a producer, as a in the middle of all the supplemental world, because that's what I find. People aren't well. They are inflamed. They get better. They don't need all that stuff. I don't teach them. I tell them to teach themselves to muscle test sometimes. So that I have a refrigerator full of stuff, and I got to tell you, it's probably half gone. Half expired, because I'll just decide like, no, I haven't had that for a little bit, and you know what? I can feel that I haven't been outdoors much, so I'm going to give myself a little kick of some D, and then I'm going to dance around whatever my body's asking me to do in that way. So I think the body actually works better if it has a little kick. And then at least let the body do the work. And that's what I'm hearing in what you're saying. So that's what I agree. I love that.
Yeah, you're right, Kathleen. Like, everyone needs sometimes a little help to get us back to baseline. That's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey man, we've been going through some stuff, or we had some sort of injury or insult or trauma or something like that. And so, hey, why don't we just help the body a little bit to get back to baseline, to the point where all of a sudden the body's like, hey, I got this. I can now take it from here, right? I think that's the best way to use supplementation. And here's another thing too. Like, I just had this thing because I posted the other day about collagen, and, people were like, hey, I just can't afford it. I can't afford it. I don't have it in my budget. I'm like, whoa. You don't need to take collagen. Like, how about just, getting some protein in your diet? How about doing some resistance-based exercises? How about getting some sleep? Do those things. And let me tell you, you do those things, your joints, your ligaments, your tendons, your bones are going to be just fine. You don't need to think that you need to take these supplements. And I think that's the problem, I feel like, with our space, is we have people being like, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. And like, if you can't feel it right now, but this is what's happening to your mitochondria. This is what's happening. It's like, nah, dude, like, it's not
and that's what happens in my world, is that they're replacing one kind of a pill that they don't like in pharmaceuticals with another kind of pill that they think is going to make the thing everything better. I think people are getting it a little bit more. Like, I'm not changing a pill for a pill. I'm looking for a whole concept of what to do to make it better. I think people are hearing it a lot, but you never know.
Anybody else in the group have questions? Because I know some people get a
I
little.
do have one last question, if I can slide it in. I want to hear, just because I've got you here and you're such a wealth of information. I have a hip injury that's not healing, and I wanted to, first of all, hear what your thoughts were about increasing healing. But someone told me about BPC 157, Body Protection Complex 157, that's or just the topic of recovery peptides in general. Do you have any thoughts or feelings about recovery peptides in terms of aiding in healing from injuries?
Yes. Okay. So I have not taken them personally yet. Okay. Right. I really do appreciate the value of peptides, and BPC 157 is probably one of the most used ones. They're used for the specific purpose that you're looking for, which is more of a musculoskeletal type of thing.
Yeah.
I think that you are using it in the best sense, in which you have an injury, you have an insult, you have a trauma, and the body needs initiation of healing and properties, right? Side note, the reason why I'm just noting that little piece is I see a lot of people taking these peptides for leveling up. Right? They're saying, "Hey, like, I want to get more out of what I've got going on." I'm not really sure that that's the best way of taking the peptides. I believe that peptides are initiators when you are in a deficiency. Okay, right? And so, therefore, I'm a big fan about how you're thinking about using them. Okay, right? Secondly, I think because you're talking about a musculoskeletal issue, that it can be valuable for your hip. Okay, right? I think that it acutely is very concentrated. I can't do what these peptides do with supplementation as quickly as these peptides do. Okay, right? So therefore, I think it's great for you to use it. I will say it's a bit of kind of like PRP and stem cell and such. Like, it seems like when it works, and when it doesn't work, it doesn't really work. Okay, right? And then I would also say, last piece is that it is something that, again, have patience with. Right? Like, you want to keep feeding the body those peptides. You don't have to be as patient as maybe supplementation for 90 days or so, but you have to be consistent with its use. Yeah. You have to make sure that it is quality stuff, because I will say, just like with anything, by the way, as soon as something gets super hot, there's just a bunch of junk out there. And peptides happen to be one of them, because peptides in general are not an inexpensive thing. So everybody wants to make it inexpensive, and that's when they start cutting corners. And my last piece, sorry, I thought I said last piece was the last piece, is I would go for injection rather than oral. So
do peptides fall under FDA, or under pharma, or under supplement, or where are they at?
They are like in this gray area right now. Like they're in this space where like nobody knows what to do with it. It's not really legal. You're not supposed to be able to buy it, online unless you're a practitioner, but it's just, they haven't really done much with it, but it's coming because there's so many people using it, right? And you got these, people stacking, so, the Wolverine stack, all that sort of stuff where they're pairing a bunch of peptides together, so.
Wow. Well, I was taking it orally. Why do you say injections more so than oral?
Yeah, awesome. Because I feel that peptides are very directed, like meaning that you're there to put it in a specific area, right? Because you have trauma and issue in that specific area. I just don't feel like it's great systemically to use, like a lot of people that use stuff orally are like, like the guy at the gym was like, Jeevers, you should use it. It'll help you to recover faster and whatever. And I'm like, I'm 50. Like, I think this is like, I'm fine with my recovery. You know what I mean? Right? Like, I don't want to be changing narratives at this point. You know what I mean? Right? Like, okay.
Thank you. That's really, really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Jeevers, this was amazing. You didn't fully introduce yourself at the beginning, so just kind of briefly tell them about some of your products, because you're a local company.
Yes.
You like supporting local. Just list the ones that you have, because I think they're outstanding, and that way, it's here and people know it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Well, I won't bore you too much. It's super cool. So yeah, like Veronica said, I'll tell you the fun story because it's kind of a fun story. So like 5 years ago or so, I was developing products, and I developed a line of gum actually for Under Armour. And they wanted to get into nutrition and supplementation, and they wanted a unique kind of system or whatever. And so I developed this line of gum, and they didn't end up releasing it, but I had the gum, and one of them was for focus, clarity, and concentration. And so in my formulation firm, we work with a lot of professional athletes as well too, for their pre and post programs or season programs and things like that for supplements. And one of my clients is Phil Mickelson, golfer or whatever, and I gave him this gum for focus, clarity, and concentration. And I don't know if any of you guys are golfers, but he ended up like loving the gum, and he gave it to his friends. And luckily, his friends are like Tiger Woods and Sergio Garcia and Ernie Els and all these sort of guys. And so I gave him this gum, and he gave it to his friends, and then it showed up at the Masters. And literally, it just kind of got a little bit crazy. And I was giving them the gum in like little Ziploc bags and such. And so I was like, oh, maybe I should do something with it. And so I named it, I don't think it was the greatest name, but I named it Yippies for the Yips. And I got it out on the website, and it started selling and stuff. It wasn't really big or anything, but it started to gain some traction. And then they started asking me if I was going to develop any more products in the line. Wasn't really thinking about it, because then you're developing a brand and that's a whole thing or whatever. But I was like, what the heck? I kind of have my own philosophies on how I think that you should be kind of, driving benefits for products. And by the way, little side note, I know everybody loves to talk about ingredients, but one of the things that I would really kind of think about is philosophies, because every company has their own philosophy, and they have their own philosophy on how they think they're going to drive the benefit that you're going to get. And the ingredients are just mere vehicles for their philosophy. And most people, they get so focused on the ingredient when they should be asking, how are you saying that you are going to give me this benefit using the body's innate systems or whatever? Because that's what you're most interested in. And then you then go find a philosophy that actually fits what you believe, because there's many great companies out there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they fit with your philosophy. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of share that a second, because that was kind of the whole point with Pros, is that it's called Pros Performance Nutrition. That's my company. And so I said, listen, I have these certain philosophies of how I believe that people are going to get the benefit, and how I look at health is very much on a root issue. Like, I don't really care about your symptoms. I kind of say in a fun way, like, I don't care about your pain. I don't care about the fact that you can't sleep. I don't care about the fact that you can't focus, because that's really not your issue. You've got some sort of root issue, some sort of imbalance that's causing a manifestation of that symptom. So anyways, so I kind of had my own philosophy on how individuals could heal tissue and heal the joint, and therefore obviously reduce their pain. And so I developed a product. It's a topical called Nerve that focuses on promoting nerve and nerve health, focusing on targeted inflammation, and then promoting circulation. And then I developed a product for sleep that doesn't really focus on sleep, but it focuses on cortisol levels and insulin levels, and also calms the nervous system, and then promotes the proper brain chemistry. And then a lot of athletes were always focused on their inflammation or excess inflammation. So I developed a product that really focuses on adaptogens and things like that. And then I had the gum for focus. And then I made another product for emotional balance. So I kind of looked at the areas in which people were basically taking pharmaceuticals, and could I develop something that was, maybe not as potent as a pharmaceutical, but the thing is that most people that are taking pharmaceuticals don't need something that potent. But if I could create some really nature-centric formulations that kind of help that. So anyways, that's what we did. And then we just kind of got going, and I got to meet individuals like or practitioners like Veronica, and we have been doing really well. Like, we're the only product at MD Anderson Cancer Center. We're at the Mayo Clinic. We're at the Cleveland Clinic. We've got 30 practicing physicians on our board. We just have, it's just fun. Yeah. So that's a lot more than a.
So if any
hopefully
practitioner is interested in carrying your products, just have them reach out to you or learning more about them, right?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to kind of tell you about our philosophies and what we do. And then it's all about you saying, you know what, like that's my philosophy. And if that's the case, I think there's a synergy, maybe.
I definitely think we need a future series on like top 10 supplements and things like that. And then a series on the products you have. Maybe we can do one in person so we can, really see it. So I'm really grateful. Do we have another question from anyone? No, we're all like, this was amazing. Amazing, Jeevers.
Thank you.
Your
Gosh,
energy
I'm worried.
exudes through the screen.
No, that's awesome. Well, like I said, I am just writing this thing here before.
Yeah.
Hold on one second. Sorry.
You're gonna get lots of thank yous in the chat.
Yeah.
There's the
Well,
pros.
no, hey, listen, Veronica, like, thank you so much for this opportunity. I love this group, and it's such a focused group of individuals who I can hear from the questions that we all have kind of the same like philosophy of health, right? Where at the very end of the day, can we just remove the obstacles to let our bodies do its thing? Because like literally we have evolved this far through plague, through famine, through all that. Like, we are the strongest species ever, you know what I mean, right? And so we just need to like give it a little bit of lift and move away stuff, and if that's the case, we can get a whole lot out of ourselves. So and thanks for spending the time, all this time. Thanks for the great questions.